All right, 1, 2, 3. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Chalkboard History.
Yeah.
It's Crash Course Battle of Nashville edition.
Battle of Music City, little notes.
Oh, for the love.
No, Nashville, no.
The Battle of Nashville.
There it is. There it is. What is it about the Battle of Nashville? Because even in your book, you didn't necessarily write about Nashville.
I didn't write about Nashville at all.
Yeah, you just got Franklin. Boop.
Yeah. Well, it's its own thing, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, Hood and Schofield are there, but
yeah.
It really is. It's just a different. The army, especially the Federal Army, is so different. The Confederates are on, the defensive. It's a 2-day battle. The battlefield is huge. Mm-hmm. I've actually gotten more interested in Nashville as the years have gone by. Not enough to probably write about it, but I wasn't interested in covering that when I was working on my first book, because I thought Spring Hill and Franklin stood apart. But it is important because, Franklin's the last like major battle like that where there's this massive attack. It's pretty straightforward, but Nashville really is sort of the last epic fight, and I guess as I'm thinking about it off the cuff, Nashville's really where the Army of Tennessee finally dies.
Yeah.
There was a mortal wound inflicted on it at Franklin, and it's surprising they held up on the first day.
Yeah,
but when the cards went against them on the second day, it's just a complete and total collapse, and it's really. That second day is pretty fascinating. Mm-hmm.
And you see the deterioration of the Army from the time that they leave Confederate Army, from the time they leave Franklin to the first day of Nashville. And as the Eastern flank, as they start to break and start to rush back, and they're retreating back and forming that kind of really good interior line, you just watch as it's almost as if they're just giving up at some point. There's a level of just, all right, it's over, we're done.
Yeah, when you see how Hood formed up the army, he's conforming to Thomas's position initially. So Thomas has the interior line, river to river with almost like Franklin.
Yeah.
But Hood, the way that Hood just conforms to that, gives you a sense that his plan was really no more than go up there and see what happens.
Yeah, just be there.
And that's not a criticism. I think that's just the reality, is that Hood, even after Franklin, you can't back up. In fact, I think I've softened on this. Maybe he could go to Murfreesboro, and cause more trouble than he did. But once he got to Nashville, that was going to be it. That was going to be the last fight. And they just sat there. And then after the first day, then he reforms to that. Imagine if he'd had an interior line initially formed up to Thomas's interior line and had forced Thomas to attack that position. I guess it couldn't. That's the what if. It couldn't have turned out any worse than it did. But you can see.
I wish there's a way we could illustrate. Actually, we can.
I'll draw on the chalk.
So he goes from a line sort of scattered out like this with lunettes, sort of in a semicircle, to what looks like. Half of a bean on top, half of a guitar. Perfect for the Battle of Music City. But half of a guitar on the top, half bean. And that line, it's amazing that they hold out as long as they do.
Well, Stewart's corps and Cheatham's corps are just, beaten senseless at Franklin. So it's Stephen D. Lee's corps.
Yeah, that's the strength. That's the muscle.
That holds up. But there's something else happening at Nashville that I think we have to talk about, especially since we're sitting at Rippavilla. There are battles in which black troops obviously performed well, or places that are well known, Battery Wagner, the 54th Massachusetts. I think most everyone's heard of Fort Pillow, places like Jenkins Ferry, the Crater, Newmarket Heights. But oh my God, at Nashville.
Yeah.
When Steedman's troops, but particularly Charles Thompson's brigade, and in that brigade is the 12th USCT, And one of the guys in that unit in particular, I mean, there's several who have ties to Rippavilla, but one of them is Joshua Chairs. And, you know, they took hundreds of casualties, Thompson's men did, on the second day as they're hitting Overton Hill. And if you want to see what a tragedy Nashville was in the modern era, is that entire area of the battlefield was just completely bastardized by I-65, by the school that was built there, by the residential stuff, and it's just all carved up. Now, further west, you have Shies Hill, which is really the last gasp, where Bates' division gets overrun by the infantry and the cavalry. But my goodness, that area basically from Franklin Road, because Overton Hill is just a little bit east of it, all the way to the west, you know, the ground kind of goes like this.
Yeah.
I mean, if you were over on Shies Hill, if you were a Confederate, you could see all the way to Overton Hill. And you know that the artillerists, they had been just, this is like almost like a World War I or World War II scene. They're just hammering that hill all morning long. And then
who's back? That's Holtzclaw's Alabamans.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And then the infantry starts pushing up the heights, and then the same thing happens on Shies Hill. Oh my goodness, what a spectacle. And then, you know, the cavalry, the Federal cavalry's driving in from the west down Hillsborough Pike, and they start getting kind of behind that Shies Hill line, and then whoosh, the whole thing just falls apart. But if you were a Confederate, like, it didn't matter whether, I guess, you were on Overton Hill or further to the west. I mean, you saw these black troops just coming in waves.
Was it I can't remember who said it, but they came only to die.
Yeah. This was the war that you would never anticipated. You know, 2 years now into emancipation, and 5,000 Confederates surrender. I mean, in that after in a sort of afterglow of the fire and the artillery fire and the musket fire and the smoke, and the sun is setting, and for me, on a personal perspective, Nashville was always interesting because I don't have any, you know, my family all came here after the war. Is there's a guy climbing through the mud and the fire, guys in the 7th and the 9th Minnesota. And this guy is buried in my hometown who was an immigrant, barely spoke English, and he's there with the other guys from these Minnesota units in the 16th Corps scaling Shies Hill. And then, you know, the nastiness up there, which is personified in that, you know, kind of macabre story about William Shies' grave being dug up years later around Christmas time. But, you know, Shai took a 36 Colt Navy right to the head because those guys wouldn't surrender.
Yeah. It's the same thing with the Thomas Benton Smith story, being, you know, clubbed as a prisoner of war, and, you know, his head being bashed in. It's just that type of fighting.
Yeah.
I think we see almost like a preview of at Franklin. There's like a little snapshot of what it's going to be like when they get to Nashville. Yeah. In the same way that Spring Hill sets the stage for Franklin, I think Franklin perfectly lines up for the brutality, particularly of the first day's fighting in Nashville, and then that second day as they just break and run.
I remember years ago reading an account from a Confederate, and I don't think it was in Confederate Veteran. I think I stumbled across this in a newspaper. And he said, sitting up on the hills, you know, and first of all, it was warm, and then it got bitterly cold, and then it snowed, and then it sleeted, and then it rained, and it was just, everything just sucked for days. And he said he had begun to understand how Napoleon's men must have felt as they sat outside Moscow and they could see the lights. And because they could see the lights of Nashville, they could hear the boat traffic on the Cumberland, they could hear the church bells tolling. But he said the difference was Moscow wasn't the home for Napoleon's men, and for some of us, that was our home, and we couldn't get there. We couldn't quite reach it. And then post-Nashville, for the next really 10 days, it is just an absolute meltdown as the Confederates are retreating back through Franklin, back through Spring Hill, right out here, pushing down Columbia Pike.
And I think, you know, give credit to Stephen D. Lee and for the first time to Forrest for their coverage on their retreat.
Wait a minute, I thought Forrest did it all.
No, Stephen D. Lee did all the work.
A
whole lot of the heavy lifting.
Let's set the record straight, everybody. Nathan Bedford Forrest did not save the Confederate Army. It was Stephen D. Lee that covered the retreat all the way to
Columbia. Seriously wounded, too.
To Columbia.
Yeah.
Right. Which is probably, in my opinion, the Confederate Army at its most vulnerable. Because by the time they got to Columbia and got on the other side of the Duck River, they'd been able to kind of catch their breath. But then Forrest does some incredible work, particularly close to
Getting them down to the Tennessee
Pulaski
River.
and south of it, fending off Wilson's cavalry is relentless. And then they get
even that fighting in Franklin on the 17th.
Yeah.
Like Knipe's cavalry coming down out of the Hillsborough area and right down on God Almighty.
And to this day, no one's written a book, a really thorough book on the retreat. I mean, there's a couple of really good books on Nashville, like Stanley Horn. It's why I didn't write about it, because Stanley Horn had already done it. And then after my book came out, James Lee McDonough, I thought, did a really good job on just
Final Gamble.
On Nashville.
Yeah.
But the retreat is something that probably should be covered. And then I guess the best way to finish it is that, the Confederates, they go into Alabama and then kind of skirt west into Mississippi. And they get orders to go to the Carolinas, and half the army just
Gone.
disappears.
Part of it goes to Alabama, part of it goes to North Carolina, but everybody else just
the Sam Watkins.
Yep.
Sam Watkins.
Oh,
Everybody.
you're telling me that the wonderful, most famous memoirist of the Civil War, Sam Watkins, left the army?
As I've been reminded, some of these people weren't stupid. And Sam Watkins saw the writing on the wall, and he had been in it, and I think he was tired of it, and he ended up in Memphis, where he later took the loyalty oath.
And who could blame him, really? After the last month and a half with the Army of Tennessee.
I'm not sure I would have gone to Nashville. I think I might have just said, you know what, y'all, I'm done.
Yeah.
But they, a few thousand of them do end up going east, and there's probably 6,000 or 7,000 guys left who surrender in April. And sometimes I see their names on the rolls, and I'm like, God, you guys were hardcore. Like, you really were the
bitter enders. I think about Bates' division at Bentonville, and it's really no larger than a regiment. But it's all those guys who were at Franklin who had been there since 61.
Is really that how big his division is? God,
but
that's right.
There's nothing left.
Because so many of them got captured at Nashville. That's right. On Shies Hill.
They're small.
A division that's 100 or 200 guys.
Yeah.
Effective guys.
Yeah. But those are probably 200 guys that you don't want to run into in a dark alley
the
somewhere.
Bitter enders. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, one last thing. Nashville's finally gotten some love in recent years. I mean, Fort Negley is well preserved. Shies Hill. There's been some great work done at Shies Hill by the Battle of Nashville Preservation Society. A couple of really great monuments on Shies Hill now. A couple of the lunettes, but it's sadly 440 destroyed much of it. But there are pieces, and of course Traveler's Rest is.
I was going to say, if you can stand at Traveler's Rest and look out across the railroad tracks and you kind of see towards Peach Orchard and everything, you get a good feel for maybe not a totally immersive experience, but you get a good feel for the ground and the terrain and the view shed, certainly from Traveler's Rest.
Right, and I think anybody who visits and comes to Rippaville or Carterhouse or Carnton should, if they've got time, should at least go and see a little bit of Nashville. Standing on Shies Hill in December and looking toward the city is still a pretty powerful experience. All right, that's it. Battle of Nashville. Thanks, everybody.